extremely excited to be here, talking about Army financial management. I'm gonna say FM a lot, and I just want you to know that stands for financial management, okay, just to make sure there's no questions. It's a little bit easier to say. So before I get started, though, I just wanted to announce that I have members of my Army bot squad here amongst us today. If I could ask Miss Christine Jex to stand up. Christine's right in the back over there. And we also have some other members, Raza, Carl, and we even have a new, one of our new developers that is actually starting on Monday, Fernanda. If you want to raise your hand wherever you are. Okay. So, like I said, I'm very excited to be here. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much for UiPath for inviting me. I was here last year at this event, and I had a chance to speak and answer some questions. Was anybody at that event, just out of curiosity, by a show of hands? Okay, a few of you, good deal. I'm actually gonna talk to you about where we've taken RPA in our journey. So really, this is about the journey that Army Financial Management, FM, has been involved with RPA. And then I'm gonna also talk to you about some challenges. So I wanna be real, right? I wanna tell you that it's not all cake, right? There are some challenges along the way, and I saw a lot of hands that Gerard, when he asked the question about where are you in your journey, and a lot of you are kind of just getting started. So hopefully you can take some of the feedback and some of the experiences that we've learned in the Army and apply that in your own organizations. And I would encourage you all to reach out. So I don't have slides today. I was actually asked not to provide slides. However, I do have a video to show you, so that'll maybe balance that and be exciting. I had to fall back on some index cards just to keep me all focused because I'm so excited. We have a lot of stuff we're doing. But I do want to let you know that if you want to contact us, you can see our email right there. And we have an RPA mailbox for the Army FM Enterprise. So feel free to reach out anytime. Christine and the team will be happy to answer questions, set up sessions so we can kind of show you a little bit more in depth of what we're doing. I'm also really excited to announce, for those of you that are in the Department of Defense somewhere, maybe you're a contractor, government employee, any one of the departments, we have a MillSuite site where we have tons of information. We have all of our videos for our automations. We have information out there. It's just a really good place to kind of interact, learn about what we're doing, and we plan on continuing and keeping that live and updated. We have discussion boards, etc. So we're leveraging that capability to provide information. One of the biggest things, I'm here to represent Army Financial Management, but we're very transparent. We want everybody within the DoD and the federal government to be able to make use of this capability. That's very, very important for us. So I'm going to kind of walk with you, talk with you while I'm walking up here about our journey. And what I want to orient you to is the first that I heard of RPA was towards the end of 2017. And I was invited to a Build a Bot session. Okay, it was actually using another software product called Automation Anywhere. And that was kind of my first introduction to RPA. And I have a software engineering background, so I was a little skeptical when I first heard about RPA. You know, I'm like, well, why can't I just have a team and develop a capability? Why do I need these RPA software packages? And it was very eye-opening to me. The example that we used for the Build a Bot session was very simple. It was basically taking a PDF file, reading some of the contents, exporting it into Excel, and that was pretty much it. But it was eye-opening because I realized that back in the Army and probably every other organization, it's really about what our workforce does today, right? In the financial management area, we want to be able to analyze information to help make informed decisions. And we spend a lot of our time getting data from different sources, right? It takes a long time just to get access to the information, pull it down as an analyst, make sense of it, communicate it. So I started realizing very early that the benefits of RPA makes that data available much quicker, and then it can be actioned upon. So it was pretty much a no-brainer bringing this into the Army. So one of the other things that we did was when we said, let's get this and deploy it, how do we start? We wanted to develop a proof of concept, okay? Now I work for the financial management part of the organization, and this is not something that, we're not an IT organization. So we reached out to other organizations within the Army and we said, hey, first of all, does this capability exist? Can we leverage it today? And we didn't really find anybody using it today. We looked across to see if the software was approved, and it wasn't, so there were some challenges getting started. And we really wanted to get some good ideas for how to apply. So we worked with the Chief Information Officer organization of the Army, and we got a proof of concept going. The proof of concept was really just to test some of the capabilities of RPA and get some energy generated throughout the Army. And we did that. And this particular one would log into our financial system. One of our, I don't know if any of you have heard of the General Funds Enterprise Business System, but it's a system where we provide all of our financial transactions and operations in the Army for the general fund. We picked a proof of concept, we work with CIG6, and we want to get a sense on where we're spending IT throughout the Army. And so that proof of concept took about 4 weeks. The actual bot that was built was about a full day's worth of work. A full day's worth of work. The biggest part of it was trying to identify and understand the process itself, okay? So the proof of concept was really, can we apply the capability in some way to an Army example, and we found that. The next step was, what do we do after we get this proof of concept, okay? We got some energy, we created a video about the proof of concept, then what do we do? Well, we needed to operate. So how do we actually operationalize something? We get some ideas for pilots, but in order to have something stick, you need to think of the long game, okay? So what did we do? We created the bot squad. You met Christine and team in the back, right? And we started to understand what types of skills are actually needed to deploy this capability. We want to be able to operate in the Army and the federal government. We have governance, right? So how do we prioritize these ideas coming in? What's the methodology that we're going to apply so we can take an idea and move it all the way through the process so we can actually deliver something at the end of the day? And so we focus on this operational design. And I do want to mention also, we worked with our industry partners and industry contractors early on to get a sense on, we know that RPA is out there, right? Just because it's new to the Army, new to our environment, and some of you, a lot of you that are new to this, you don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? Lift and shift. Leverage what you see that other organizations are using that are success, and then leverage it, and then build it in your organization. That's kind of our approach. So we understood the operational model. We got some really good ideas. Governance is something a little unique, right? Because each organization kind of handles governance a little bit different. And then the big benefit to really deploy this thing is we needed an automation lifecycle. Okay, well, what does that mean? And Gerard showed a little bit about that in his model. But the first thing is an idea. Where are we going to generate this demand, right? Because my office in the financial management community, we can come up with our ideas, but we wanted something that would be really far-reaching, enterprise-wide. So we created an ideation stage in the process. I'm actually happy to announce that in 2018, very early on, we deployed a workflow tool worldwide. All right, we already had this technology in place that we're using in the financial management enterprise of the Army, and we deployed it worldwide so that any organization in the Army can submit an idea request in our queue. And then it would signify to us that we have a request. And then the next step of the process is assessment. All right, so how do we start to look at these ideas that come in? We have an assessment calculator that basically looks at complexity as an example. So if I have an idea to automate a process that exists today that's being performed manual, well, let's say it touches or pulls information from multiple systems, right? Multiple systems. Within the Army, sometimes they're Army systems, sometimes they're OSD systems, Office of Secretary of Defense systems. And the nuances for pulling all that information together could be complex. So we look at complexity as an indicator, and we also look at the benefits and the return back to the Army. And then we come up with a score. Once we do that, I mentioned governance is very important, and it's important in the government in general. We developed a bot control board. All right, and there's a step after the assessment where we have a whole queued set of ideas that get assessed, and then we have a governance process where I chair and I have other members of the business mission area of the Army and the financial management represented there, and we'll rack and stack them. The bot squad does an initial assessment on where they think their one-to-end prioritization is, and then we look at it a little bit more holistically across the community. Once that is racked and stacked, then it goes back to the bot squad. And then we have a design and develop stage, okay? So they're gonna actually work, they're gonna work with the process owner who submitted the idea, and they're gonna understand that process should have been documented because that was part of the assessment as well. And then they're gonna start design and build that bot. That part of the process, what we're finding, is relatively straightforward. One of the bottlenecks in that process is making sure that you have the documentation. So an idea is only as good as the documentation that exists for the idea. And that's one of the things that we found, because we wanted to really get this thing out there and started. We didn't want to spend a lot of time designing the process, understanding the process. We were really hoping to get this low-hanging fruit early on, and that's kind of what we did. After the bot is developed, then we obviously have to test it, right? Integration testing. And throughout the whole process, we make sure that the sponsor organization that performs the process today, they're part of that, all of those steps, because the engagement is very important. Okay, just like traditional software development, you have to have the customer engaged the whole way. After integration testing, then there's a process called PCB approval, Process Control Board. And that's what the bot squad handles, all right? What they do is that's where the SLA, the service level agreement, comes to play, making sure that everything is fine-tuned, and our process owner, the person or the organization that actually submitted the idea going in, and the ones responsible for the actual process to be achieved and to work, is committed. Once that occurs, then we deliver and deploy it. And I will talk to you a little bit today about attended versus unattended. Just by a show of hands, do you know what I mean when I say attended bot versus unattended? Okay, good. So I don't have to explain that too much. But I will say right off the bat right now that is one of our key challenges right now is the bots that we have, and I'll talk about those in a little bit. They're running in an attended mode because we have some key challenges that we're working through. Okay, but that's a scalability issue. And that's pretty much the process. And then it obviously goes into sustainment. And why is sustainment important? Well, if you think about this, so if I'm a user, if I'm an employee, and I pull data from the General Fund Enterprise Business System, as I'm going to show you an example of this. Let's say there's a change that happens in that system, right? Well, how's the bot going to know about it? Well, we need to make sure we're up to date on all of our system changes. Maybe there's new data fields. Maybe something changes in the screen for how you actually log in. That engagement is really, really important. And so that's our process for idea all the way through delivery, all the way to sustainment. And one of the things that I would caution and also recommend is you need to keep that process kind of fluid and dynamic, right? You need to learn as you go. There's been a lot of discussion already today about just getting these bots out the door, getting them out there, and 100% you have to do it, but you also have to be flexible, dynamic. You have to look at your team. I talked about the operating model. In our team, we have developers, we have process analysts. We need to keep them fresh and understanding where the bottlenecks are and always work to improve the process, because at the end of the day, these bots are really only as good as how they're applied in the environment. We want to be able to see them in action, okay? So with that, some more things that we need to think about that were a challenge in the Army and probably a lot of other organizations, and that's the ATO, the initial approval to operate. Now, what we were able to do was another DoD organization actually got approval for UiPath Studio and another RPA software called Pega RPA. And so our local IT group was actually able to use reciprocity and approve the software to be installed much quicker. So for those of you that are kind of stuck, definitely heavily recommend engagement with your IT office. And you can also show some examples of where other federal organizations were able to get the software approved. I mean, that's pretty much step one, right? You need to do that. I also want to mention, so in the Army, in the ofEnterprise, we deployed our first production bot in December of 2018, okay? It was relatively limited scale. I don't have a lot of time to go into every detail about it, but we wanted to get something through the gate and actually deliver a bot. That's key. The momentum that you generate with the ideas, you may get some skeptics. You may have some skeptics along the way. Getting that champion is very key, but also being able to get that first bot or more initially is going to be important, okay? Because then you have something real. That is very, very key. We also developed and deployed 3 additional bots after that first one in December in 2019, this year. And my team right now has a goal of completing 10 automations by the end of May this year. So we're kind of clocking, right? We're clocking. We have the team in place. We have the process in place. We have leadership engagement, leadership support all the way at the highest levels, which is very, very important. And that's kind of what we do. One thing I do want to mention, though, is we've been engaged in partnering with others to get infrastructure started. And what do I mean by that? So the 4 production automations that we have deployed today in production, they're on laptops, okay? That's not ideal. They're on a client machine. We're actually utilizing UiPath Studio for that, to deploy them. And so while it gets it out and it gets organizations using them, it's very hard to scale that way. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as well. On the other side, too, another area that's been a challenge is bot credentials, right? So in the Army and maybe other federal organizations, I know at least in the DoD, we have common access cards to access our systems, right? A physical card with certificates on them. Well, what we'd like to do is we'd like to get those certificates applied to a non-human entity or a bot, okay? Because why? Well, when we're running in attended mode, we're relying on a person's credentials, a person's access to be able to run that automation. So we need to explore that a little bit more as far as how do we scale across the enterprise, because the Army is very large. Another thing that we've done is we're very transparent and we want to enable success for other organizations. So in September 2018, we launched the DoD, Department of Defense, RPA Consortium. Okay, so Army is an Army first. Army actually launched it. And we have many organizations that are members. We have about 12 organizations that are members throughout the Department of Defense. And there's many topic areas, right? So the whole idea is we want to share information. We're all on similar journeys. Some are more mature than others. Those of you here, I saw a lot of hands that you're kind of initial stages of this. So there's a lot to learn. And so what are the things that we talk about? Well, I mentioned getting the software installed, to be approved to be installed and run on a network. So the ATO reciprocity. So we provide that information to help other organizations. We look at use cases of RPA, right? I think there's going to, my guess is that, and based on what we're doing, is there's going to be a maturation process on use cases. Right now, we're looking at pulling data to make it available for analysts to be able to consume and use that information to be more actionable. But over time, we're going to evolve that, right? We're going to have different types of use cases, and there's many that we're already thinking about in the Army. Automation assets. So when we build, like for example, you're going to see shortly in a video, we have a login to one of our primary systems in the financial management area. Well, if we build that bot to be able to log in, why can't we share that with another organization, maybe outside the service that logs into that system? So we want to share these objects or these assets with other organizations. How do you do that? What are the best practices? That's what this RPA consortium is for. Bot credentials. I think today you're going to hear DLA speak a little bit about their journey and their experience. And so they're a member of our forum, and they've actually shared what they're doing on piloting the credential solutions as well. So we like to learn, right? Learn and share stories and not reinvent the wheel. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about one of our automations that are in production. It's a pretty big deal, at least we think so in the Army, and it's a great example of how to apply RPA. And it's based off of the Joint Reconciliation Program, okay? It's triannual review. So it happens 3 times a year, and it's financial in nature. It's really about financial health and making sure that we're using our finances appropriately, timeliness to achieve results to really support the warfighter, right? Because that's what the Army is about. And this particular bot pulls 5 reports from our General Funds Enterprise Business System. Some examples of those are accounts payable reports, accounts receivable reports, unfilled customer orders, unpaid obligations. So this one's very important. This is the one I'm going to demo. And then it actually puts together a checklist. So Army headquarters requires that each Army organization that has fund certifiers go through this process 3 times a year. So it's definitely a very wide process. So you can think about how many people. So just to give you an example too, before we show this, currently we have this deployed to 101 fund centers in the Army. And think of a fund center as kind of a smaller organization that has a fund certifier and some financial analysts in the organization. So 101 people, okay? On average, and this is a conservative average, 15 minutes to run each one of those reports and to do the checklist. So you're looking at about 90 minutes a person, 3 times a year across 101 fund centers. You have about 454 hours. It doesn't sound too much, right? But if you extrapolate that to the Army's more than 2,300 fund centers, so 2,300 people, that's over 10,000 hours a year. Now, the other thing too is we do this 3 times a year today. But what if we did this weekly? What if we actually got handle on our funds weekly or monthly or daily? You can start building upon this application of RPA. I can even do it within the Army. And we can start making it such that the triannual review that happens 3 times a year, there's less anomalies, less information to go through, less fixes to make with the data because we're doing it more often. And the bots can run more often. And see, that's a scalability issue because right now we're running in attended mode, right? So I have the bot squad, my team is actually running these bots. we get to a point where we can't accommodate and run because we're relying on our people in the team. So then we have to think of other ways to do it. Do we decentralize running of these bots to Army organizations for them to run? We still have people in the loop. We're shifting the focus from pulling the data, by a particular individual, having that offloaded someplace else, and then them spending time fixing some of the issues and anomalies and explaining the information. So there's still a lot to be learned with this, and we're still in our maturation. But with that, I'm going to walk you through the video. So if you wouldn't mind playing the video, and I'll kind of show you this example on the Joint Reconciliation Program. It's a 2-minute video. It's not too long. So the first part of the bot basically pulls reports from our General Funds Enterprise Business System. It logs in, which it did. And this is kind of the main screen. It clicks over in the Business Intelligence tab. It pulls the report, right? Very quick. It generates the report. This one's the unpaid obligations report. So if you can see that, you can start seeing financial transaction lines. You can see some parameters that the bot fills in. And then with everything, right, there's a little bit of a delay. So a human doesn't have to sit here and wait. It's the bot that's waiting, right? So the humans can actually do other work. Because our systems, it always takes time to run information across large data sets. That's just the nature of the technology. So it's creating the reports. Now it's going to download the report in Excel, right? Because that's something that all of our analysts use. They all know it. So it gets it into Excel, and then there's certain rules to be able to support this effort. And a human would have to do this, but the bot's actually doing it. It's parsing the data out. It's performing the calculations inside of the Excel spreadsheet. There's certain thresholds, right? So if certain transactions are above a threshold that has not been paid, it's flagged, and the analyst needs to review it. That's what it does. When it does all of that work, then it posts in the Army SharePoint site. So it's going to show you that. It's pretty easy. Basically goes in the SharePoint, opens up the folder, and it saves the report. "90 minutes roughly. I still think it's very, very conservative. It's probably much longer to do that whole process. Right? And the automation does it really, really easy. So that's an example of one of our automations that we have in production today. So I talked a little bit about some of our challenges, right? I don't want to paint the picture very rosy, right? Because it is a journey, and there's a lot to learn along the way. And I would encourage all of you that just kind of be flexible with your thinking. If you're having trouble getting buy-in in your organization, that's a problem, right? So you need a key champion to really take this through and keep the momentum. I would definitely try to reach out to other organizations. You're more than welcome. You have our contact information to reach out to Army, and we'd be happy to kind of help you and share a little bit more in depth of what we've done. Some other key challenges, and I think Gerard alluded to them, and that was on the deployment model. Is it locally deployed or enterprise-wide, centralized versus decentralized? That's something that we're still exploring in the Army. And I can tell you in Army Financial Management, we have centralized this capability because we want some of the key controls to be in place. We don't want everybody to kind of learn it at the same time. We want to have a model that we feel very comfortable with, and then we can explore if we want to decentralize some aspects of it. The other thing too is the actual ideas that come in. A lot of them are coming in from the local level, from different command level. If you think of the Army, it's very hierarchical. And so what we're finding is the requests that come in, they can be applied to the entire enterprise. Okay, so that's a challenge right now, is when you take something local and they have a local defined process, are other organizations utilizing that same process, or do they have their own interpretation and their own rules of how they go about the process? So that's definitely an area that we need to focus a little bit more on. Attended versus unattended. I don't believe we can scale efficiently from a cost perspective and from a people time perspective if we don't solve the unattended versus attended issue right now. And that's really what we're engaged in at this moment, to try to really get credentials solved, because that's a prerequisite of unattended bots. And there's policy. Cybersecurity is very, very important. And that's something that we need help with our IT communities, which we're engaged with throughout the Defense Department, to be able to solve that problem. Technical solutions to be able to achieve that, whether they're hardware solutions, you have a physical hardware or a physical card for a bot, or a software software certificate for a bot. That's very key to being to be able to be solved. And then really attended requires humans' time and credentials. And so you really can't maximize the delivery of RPA. And that's probably where organizations such as Army FM, where we are in our maturation process, we need those problems handled in order to really scale across the enterprise. So we're so close to being able to do this. So that's pretty much what I have. I would like to turn this over and take some questions if there are any out there.
The biggest challenge that you have getting to unattended is just the CAC access?
So no. So what I would say is CAC access is definitely important, right? So and there's a whole series of, it's not just CAC, it's credentialing in general. It's roles. How do you assign roles in an application to a non-human entity, right? Figuring all that out. And I would also say infrastructure. So we're early in our journey in the standpoint that we purchased a couple bots from UiPath and another vendor. And really the question is, what is the acquisition strategy for a more enterprise approach as well? So we're looking at all those. We focused early on, one of the points I tried to make early on is we focused on the operating model and governance. We wanted to have kind of that part of the framework set up and the methodology. And now we're at the point where we're starting to explore and figure out how to scale. Any other questions?
Yes, so you mentioned your workflow for your COE,
yes,
which is reflected now a lot on your attended bots, right? When you do have the unattended, you'll need to introduce the aspects, I'm assuming, unless you already have and I didn't hear it, which is going to be, of course, the audits and controls and the security aspects of the automations you're putting in and what boundaries they're crossing, et cetera, right? Because unattended, as you have already alluded to, is in fact credentialed automations.
Correct.
And that scares a lot of people.
Correct.
And why I'm asking you this way is I've been doing this for 10 years in the commercial space, and this is the biggest nut to crack. So it's not so much the technology of doing the card, as you said.
Yep.
It's getting the mindset around actually being able to implement this with a sense of security and robustness that's required. So when you see this coming, how long do you think it's going to take your agency to kind of get over that hurdle of everybody wants to protect and block the unattended automations?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. It's a very hard question to answer. I don't want to speculate at all on what the Army is going to be able to do in that regard. But I would say that we are engaged in multiple offices throughout the Defense Department and other services in this journey. And I think standing up the process that we did, where everything is documented and well documented, we're very transparent. So I think that's going to be the key to solving that problem, is being transparent on our process. I don't think our delivery process is going to change too much. Definitely with putting a bot controller in place and figuring out how to actually deliver that in the best way is going to be a factor. But I think really focusing on your documentation, making sure that you can show how the automations are developed, where do you store the code for the automations, how do you provide access and credentials today, I think it's really starting to help us have the conversations. And I think it's only a matter of time. I don't want to speculate how long. We're really hoping that we can scale this year sometime, but if it goes into next year, we want to be aggressive with our goals. I just don't know how well we're going to be able to do, but we have our champions within the comptroller for the U.S. Army, which is very important, as well as outside of Army to push to get this solved. So with our DoD consortium, with our other partners, I think we're going to be able to solve the problem. I just don't know exactly when, but it's important to keep that momentum. Otherwise, it won't get solved, to your point.
Brian, thank you for sharing your experiences. You mentioned, and so did Gerard earlier as well, having a robust pipeline of opportunities when you're getting started. Yep. What are the early wins? What are the things that your teams first started thinking about when you explored RPA?
So what we started thinking about was, how do we engage? So I alluded to the fact that in the financial management enterprise, we're not IT per se. I have an IT background. I'm a little unique, but really trying to find the organization that's going to kind of take this to the next level, I think is key. I would say that being able to connect with organizations on the ideas coming in. So how do you generate ideas, right? We did a good job selling RPA throughout our department, but the question is, how do we actually get those ideas and generate them is going to be key. And I would say engagement at all levels, having the champion in place, and really just starting to kind of look and make sure that organizations can see how they can apply RPA. But some of the early quick items to kind of focus on is really about pulling data. I mean, if you look at it from a financial perspective, it's all about data and analyzing data. We have a highly skilled, very valuable workforce. In the Army, it's all about the people, right? People and support to the warfighter. And when we look across our financial processes with our audits and everything, it's pulling information together. We have to pull key supporting documents for our auditors, right? And that touches every organization in the Army. And so coming up with ways to help employees better get access to data, really getting the data, so that way they can actually use the skills that they were hired to do in a more efficient way and analyze the data, analyze potential problems, right? And things like that are very, very important with the data, so they can focus on what's important to help drive decisions. That's really the key, and I think you'll get a lot of support that way.